There's a shadow side to compassion that nobody wants to talk about, a dark edge to helping that can destroy the helper and leave the helped exactly where they started, or worse. Carl Jung understood something most people spend their entire lives refusing to see: that some forms of helping are not noble acts of service, but unconscious agreements to participate in another person's psychological prison. And the moment you step inside that cell with them, the door locks behind you both. This isn't about becoming cold or withholding kindness from the world. This is about something far more psychologically complex, something Jung spent decades unraveling in his work with patients, in his own near-psychotic break during his confrontation with the unconscious, and in his observations of how human beings unconsciously conspire to keep each other sick. There are certain types of people, certain psychological configurations, where your help doesn't heal, it feeds. Where your compassion doesn't liberate, it enables. Where your good intentions become the very fuel that powers their dysfunction. And if you can't recognize these patterns, you'll find yourself drained, confused, and wondering why all your efforts to help someone only seem to make things worse for both of you. Welcome to Deep Psyche Lab. I'm grateful you're here, exploring these hidden territories of the psyche with me. If this is your first time encountering our work, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. We explore the depths of Jungian psychology and what it means to become conscious in a world that actively resists consciousness. Today we're venturing into uncomfortable territory, into the places where helping becomes harm, where care becomes cage. Let's begin. Jung once wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But he also understood that not every transformation moves toward health. Some psychological reactions are toxic. Some meetings of personalities create compounds that poison both parties. And the tragedy is that these toxic reactions often wear the mask of virtue, disguised as helping, caring, or loving. The first thing we need to understand is why helping can be dangerous at all. On the surface, it seems absurd. How could offering assistance to another human being be anything but good? But Jung knew that the psyche doesn't operate on surface morals. It operates on dynamics, on unconscious patterns, on shadow material that both parties bring to every interaction. When you help someone, you're not just offering practical assistance. You're entering into a psychological field, a relational constellation that activates certain archetypal patterns in both of you. And if you don't know which patterns are being activated, you become their puppet. Jung distinguished between genuine help and what we might call shadow helping. Genuine help supports another person's individuation, their journey towards psychological wholeness. It assists them in confronting their own shadow, taking responsibility for their own psyche, and developing the capacity to stand on their own ground. Shadow helping does the opposite. It keeps the other person dependent. It prevents them from confronting what they need to confront. It allows them to avoid the necessary suffering that comes with growth. And crucially, shadow helping often serves the helper's own unconscious needs more than the helped person's actual welfare. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because shadow helping feels good. It feels noble. It activates the archetypal rescuer in us, and that archetype comes with a powerful sense of meaning and identity. When you're helping someone, you feel needed, valuable, perhaps even superior in a subtle way. Your ego gets fed by being the strong one, the capable one, the one with resources and wisdom. And this is precisely the hook. This is how certain people, certain psychological types, can trap you in an endless cycle of helping that goes nowhere. There's a person you need to learn to recognize. They appear in your life as someone in desperate need. The story they tell is compelling, often tragic. They've been victimized, betrayed, abandoned, misunderstood, and they may well have been. Genuine trauma exists, genuine suffering exists, but this person has made their trauma into their identity. They have built their entire psychological structure around being the victim, and here's what Jung understood that most people miss. Victimhood can become an unconscious strategy, a way of manipulating the world while avoiding all responsibility for one's own life. This person will accept your help eagerly. They'll be grateful at first, but watch what happens. No matter what you do, it never quite works. The job you help them get, they lose within months due to circumstances that are never their fault. The advice you give, they can't follow because of some obstacle that mysteriously appears. The money you lend, it disappears into emergencies that seem to multiply. The emotional support you offer, it's never quite enough. There's always one more crisis, one more betrayal, one more reason why they can't take the step forward. Jung called this the negative inflation of the victim archetype. The person has identified so completely with being wounded that healing would mean losing their identity. On an unconscious level, they need to remain broken because being broken is how they extract value from the world. It's how they get attention, resources, special treatment. It's how they avoid the terrifying responsibility of standing as a full adult in the world. And your help, your genuine desire to see them better, becomes the very thing that enables them to stay exactly where they are. The cruel trick is that they're not usually doing this consciously. They genuinely believe they're trying to get better. They genuinely experience themselves as buffeted by cosmic unfairness. The unconscious is running the show, and the unconscious has decided that victimhood is the best survival strategy available. And when you try to help this person, you become part of their unconscious system. You become the rescuer in their victim triangle. And as long as you play that role, they never have to become the hero of their own story. Jung would tell you that the moment you recognize this pattern, you must withdraw your help. Not out of cruelty, but out of respect for their potential wholeness. The greatest gift you can give a perpetual victim is the refusal to participate in their victimhood. This doesn't mean abandoning someone in genuine crisis. It means recognizing the difference between someone who is temporarily overwhelmed and needs support, and someone whose entire identity is structured around being overwhelmed. The former will take your help and use it to move forward. The latter will take your help and use it to stay exactly where they are while making you feel responsible for their lack of progress. There's another type of person who moves through the world like a black hole, collapsing everything around them into service of their gravitational need. Jung encountered these individuals frequently in his practice and recognized them as people who had so completely identified with their ego that they'd lost all connection to the self, to the deeper center of psychological wholeness. In modern language, we might recognize this as narcissistic wounding, but Jung understood it in terms of possession by archetypal inflation. This person doesn't just want your help. They want your life force. They want your attention, your energy, your resources, your admiration. And they want it constantly. There's a hunger in them that cannot be satisfied, because it's not actually a hunger for what you're giving them. It's a hunger for something they lost or never developed in themselves, a connection to the inner world, a sense of self that doesn't depend on external validation, a capacity for genuine relationship. When you help this person, something strange happens. No matter how much you give, they always need more. No matter how much you sacrifice, it's never quite appreciated, or it's appreciated effusively for a moment and then forgotten. There's a quality of entitlement, as if your help is not a gift, but an obligation. And if you ever need something in return, if you ever have your own crisis or need, this person is mysteriously unavailable, or they show up, but they turn the conversation back to themselves within minutes. Jung understood this as a form of psychological vampirism. The person is unconsciously draining others because they have no access to their own inner source. They've put all their psychological eggs in the external basket. Their entire sense of self is dependent on how others see them, respond to them, serve them. And this means they can never have enough. The well they're trying to fill has no bottom. The dangerous thing about helping this type is that they often seem impressive initially. They may be charming, successful, articulate. They may present themselves as visionaries or uniquely gifted individuals whom the world doesn't appreciate. And your help, they suggest, is part of recognizing their special nature. You get to be part of their exceptional story. This is the bait, and many genuinely good people bite it, because they want to believe in someone. They want to be part of something meaningful. But over time, you realize you're not part of a meaningful story. You're part of a feeding system. Your role is to provide supply, what narcissistic dynamics require to function. And the moment you stop providing it, or set a boundary, or have needs of your own, the mask drops. You'll see rage or cold dismissal, or you'll be discarded and replaced with someone else who will provide what you've stopped providing. Jung would tell you that this person cannot be helped by you because they don't actually want help. They want an audience, a supply source, a reflection of their grandiose self-image. And until they hit a crisis severe enough to crack that image, until they're forced into a confrontation with their own shadow, nothing you do will matter. Then there's the person who has chosen you to carry their shadow. Jung's concept of shadow projection is one of his most important contributions to psychology. We all have aspects of ourselves we can't accept or won't acknowledge. These rejected parts don't disappear. They get projected onto others. We see in other people what we can't see in ourselves. And sometimes someone decides, usually unconsciously, that you are going to carry all the darkness they refuse to own. This person may come to you for help with a problem, but as you interact with them, you notice something disturbing. No matter what you do, you're wrong. No matter how carefully you try to help, you're misunderstood. Your motives are questioned. Your actions are interpreted in the worst possible light. You find yourself feeling crazy, doubting your own perceptions, wondering if you're actually the problem. This is shadow projection in action. The person has split off some aspect of themselves, some quality they find intolerable, and they're unconsciously putting it onto you. Maybe they can't acknowledge their own anger, so they experience you as aggressive even when you're being gentle. Maybe they can't face their own selfishness, so they accuse you of being self-serving even when you're sacrificing for them. Maybe they can't accept their own manipulativeness, so they see you as manipulative no matter how straightforward you are. Jung understood that trying to help someone who is actively projecting their shadow onto you is like trying to rescue someone from quicksand while they're pushing your head under. The more you struggle to prove you're not what they're accusing you of being, the more entangled you become in their projection. The healthier response is to step out of the projection field entirely, to refuse to accept the shadow they're trying to give you. This requires something Jung called differentiation. You have to be able to hold on to your own reality, even when someone else is insisting on a false version of you. You have to be able to say internally, if not externally, "That's not mine. That belongs to you. I won't carry it." And then you have to be willing to let the relationship go if necessary, because someone who needs you to be their shadow carrier will not tolerate you stepping out of that role. The most insidious version of this dynamic is the person who approaches you with apparent vulnerability, who shares their wounds and struggles, who seems to need your understanding and support, and you offer it, genuinely moved by their pain. But then, slowly, you realize that their vulnerability is a weapon. Every wound they show you becomes a reason why you owe them something. Every struggle they share becomes a justification for behavior that would otherwise be unacceptable. Every time you set a boundary or have a need of your own, their pain intensifies, their crisis deepens, and suddenly you're the bad guy for not being understanding enough. Jung called this the negative mother complex in its devouring form, but it appears in all genders. It's the person who has learned to use woundedness as a form of control. They've discovered, often unconsciously, that being hurt is powerful. It makes people feel guilty. It makes people accommodate. It makes people sacrifice their own needs to avoid being seen as cruel. And so their wounds never heal, because healing would mean giving up this power. When you try to help this person, you enter a trap. If you give them what they want, you reinforce the pattern. You teach them that weaponizing vulnerability works, but if you don't give them what they want, you're framed as heartless, as someone who doesn't care about their suffering. You can't win. The game is rigged, and the only way out is to refuse to play. Jung would say that genuine vulnerability is an opening, an invitation to connection. It creates the possibility of intimacy and mutual support. But weaponized vulnerability is a closing, a manipulation disguised as openness. It prevents real relationship because the wounded person is not actually available for connection. They're only available for extraction. They want your resources, your energy, your guilty compliance, but they don't want the mutual responsibility that real relationship requires. The way to recognize this pattern is to notice how you feel in the relationship. Do you feel free to have your own needs, your own boundaries, your own separate existence? Or do you feel like you're walking on eggshells, afraid that anything you do might trigger another crisis? Do you feel like the relationship has reciprocity, or does care flow in only one direction? Do you feel energized by helping this person, or do you feel drained, anxious, trapped? There's another dangerous type that Jung observed both in his practice and in the broader world. This is the person who cannot tolerate your growth. On the surface, they may say they support you. They may even claim to want the best for you. But watch what happens when you actually start to flourish. When you develop a new skill, pursue a dream, gain recognition, become more confident or capable, something shifts in them. Suddenly there are subtle criticisms, little comments that undermine your confidence, support that's actually sabotage, encouragement that comes with a barb hidden inside. Jung understood envy as one of the shadow's most destructive manifestations. The envious person cannot bear your light because it makes them feel their own darkness more acutely. Your growth doesn't inspire them. It threatens them. It confronts them with everything they haven't done, haven't become, haven't achieved. And rather than use that confrontation as fuel for their own development, they unconsciously try to dim your light so they don't have to feel the discomfort of comparison. When you help this person, you're actually feeding the dynamic that's destroying both of you. Every resource you give them, every opportunity you create for them, every piece of advice or assistance you offer, it's filtered through their envy. They may accept your help, but they resent needing it. They may follow your advice, but they'll resent that you were right. And as you continue to grow, their resentment will grow with you, until one day you realize that this person you've been trying to help has been quietly undermining you all along. The cruelty of this dynamic is that the envious person often comes disguised as a friend, a family member, someone close enough to know your vulnerabilities, and they use that knowledge not to support you, but to subtly keep you small. Jung would tell you that you cannot help someone become bigger while they're unconsciously committed to keeping you smaller. The relationship has to end or fundamentally transform. And transformation only happens if the envious person does the brutal interior work of facing their own shadow, their own feelings of inadequacy, their own unlived life. You cannot do that work for them. And trying to help them while they're in the grip of envy is like trying to hand a drowning person a life preserver while they're pulling you under. Finally, there's the person Jung might describe as possessed by the destructive aspect of the unconscious. This is someone in the grip of chaos, addiction, compulsion, or psychological disintegration. They're not just struggling, they're being pulled apart by forces they don't understand and can't control. And these forces are contagious. Step too close, offer help without proper boundaries and grounding, and you'll find yourself caught in the vortex. Jung had deep compassion for people suffering from unconscious possession. He understood that these were often individuals with genuine sensitivity, people who had touched deeper layers of the psyche but didn't have the ego strength to integrate what they'd encountered. But he also knew that you cannot rescue someone from the unconscious. They have to do the work of integrating it themselves. And if you try to do it for them, if you try to be their anchor while they're being pulled into the depths, you'll just get pulled down with them. This is the person whose life is perpetual crisis. Not the usual struggles everyone faces, but genuine chaos. Lost jobs, broken relationships, legal troubles, substance abuse, mental health crises, and every time you help them stabilize, they destabilize again. Every time you think they've turned a corner, they're back in the chaos, and you start to realize that the chaos isn't happening to them. They're generating it. Some unconscious part of them needs the drama, the intensity, the destruction, because in the chaos, they don't have to face themselves. They don't have to confront the deeper work of individuation. Jung knew that some people had to descend fully into their darkness before they could begin the journey back toward light. And that descent cannot be prevented by someone else's intervention. Your help, in these cases, just delays the inevitable crisis that might actually crack them open enough for real transformation to occur. You become an enabler not of their happiness, but of their continued avoidance of the confrontation they need to have with themselves. So what does Jung offer us instead of help in these situations? He offers something harder but more honest. He offers withdrawal with consciousness. He offers boundaries with compassion. He offers the recognition that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone's unconscious pattern, not out of judgment, but out of respect for their potential wholeness, and out of responsibility for your own. Jung spent his entire career teaching people to become conscious, to see the patterns they were running, to own their shadow instead of projecting it, to take responsibility for their own psyche instead of making it someone else's problem. And he knew that you cannot make someone else conscious. You can only become conscious yourself. And sometimes your consciousness means recognizing that helping a certain person in a certain way is actually harmful to both of you. This doesn't mean becoming cold or withholding care from the world. Jung himself was deeply committed to helping his patients, to serving the development of consciousness wherever he found it. But he knew the difference between help that serves individuation and help that prevents it. He knew that real love sometimes looks like saying no. Real compassion sometimes looks like stepping back. Real wisdom sometimes looks like letting someone face the consequences of their own choices. The people we've explored today, these 6 dangerous types, they're not evil. They're unconscious. They're running patterns they didn't choose and don't understand. And you might see aspects of these patterns in yourself, because we've all been in some of these places at different times. The question isn't whether you're perfect. The question is whether you're becoming conscious, whether you're willing to see your own patterns, own your own shadow, take responsibility for your own psyche, and if you encounter someone who is refusing consciousness, who is committed to their pattern more than to their growth, the most respectful thing you can do is release them. Release them to their own journey, their own timing, their own inevitable confrontation with themselves, and protect your own psychological space, your own energy, your own capacity to serve consciousness where it can actually take root. If this exploration has resonated with you, if you've recognized patterns in your own life, hit the like button. It tells me these depths are worth exploring together, and drop a comment with the phrase, "I choose consciousness." It's a small declaration, but declarations matter. They mark moments when we see something we can't unsee, when we choose awareness over comfort. Subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab if you haven't already, and turn on notifications. We're building a community of people willing to look into the shadows, willing to question the easy answers, willing to do the hard work of becoming whole. This channel is educational and not a substitute for therapy. Thank you for going into the depths with me today. Until next time, stay conscious, stay grounded, and remember that the most dangerous help is the help that keeps someone from helping themselves. I'll see you in the next exploration.